resource guide sessions. We're having 6 of them total, going through sort of the content we put together in this resource guide. And the resource guide, as we've mentioned in some of the other calls, is intended to be sort of one document that has a sort of a go-to with everything you'll need to know, has links to other documents. So if you don't have that, it's been emailed out several times. I'm going to pull it up right now just so people can see it. About 20 pages, and goes through everything that you kind of need to know with a lot of particular details. So today we're speaking particularly about events, volunteer events, and sort of the section of the guide related to that. So what I was thinking is doing kind of what we did last week. We have sort of a brief presentation about sort of the content, and then we'll open it up to everyone to sort of have a discussion, make sure we're addressing what you want to get out of this session. So I thought that worked pretty well last week, that format. So I want to try that again. So in true One Brick fashion, we'll start with an icebreaker. So today, I want to know what your favorite One Brick event is, and what was your most interesting experience in a One Brick event. A 2-part question. So I don't know who wants to start.
I'll start. I'll do the favorite, and then I'll have to think about the interesting experience. We used to do an event where we helped serve beer on the Jeremiah O'Brien, which was a Liberty ship in San Francisco Harbor.
Oh.
And, so the entire ship is one of these living museums where you can go crawl all over the ship. But once a year, they'd have a big fundraiser where people would pay like $150 a ticket. It was all you could drink until you fell over. And they always have a good band. The one that was very good they had most years was a U2 tribute band. And it was, on the waterfront in San Francisco. Very, very good. Everybody got drunk, everybody danced. And if you remember a couple of weeks ago, there was a fire in San Francisco on the waterfront. It was right next to that boat, and the whole pier burnt down. So I don't know if they were doing it, but I think they saved the boat. So that's my favorite event. It's because it was just a good old party. So.
Wow. Jeanette, I want to know what yours is.
So I volunteer a lot for a lot of different types of opportunities. Probably my favorites are the food and wine type of events, because oftentimes as a volunteer, one of your perks is that you get free admission and get to wander around afterwards, which is lovely. Of course, unfortunately, during this time, a lot of them have been canceled for this year. So totally missing the fact that this month we would have done Kirkland Uncorked, which was a wine festival right on the marina in Kirkland, and also to Pike Place Market's Sunset Supper. So, we're still trying to support those organizations, but missing the events for sure.
Do you guys still do the gay bingo?
We do still do the gay bingo. We had one in January before all the ruckus happened, and the theme was space. So we had lots of different costumes, which was fan-freaking-tastic. That was probably like the best part of the evening, was just seeing how creative everyone was.
Yeah, because I did that once. It was a total blast. I can't remember why I was up there, but it was really, really fun.
By you, Lanny.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be anything on the mall. Our mall is downtown, in like the White House area. Downtown.
Yeah, we know all about it.
I'm a Washingtonian. People say the mall, and they're like, "Oh, inside the what?"
We've seen you go to Atlantic.
Yeah, where other riots are. So anything down there is fun. You've got the Air and Space Museum. You have everything outdoors, kite festivals. So it's really, really fun down there. And it's awesome. And I think my most memorable is going to be Laura Bush in that blackmail picture I got of her when we were doing writing cards for the troops. And I'll share that with you guys one time as soon as I can find it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was my first One Brick event. I met Laura Bush.
Huh.
Very
That's pretty
memorable.
cool.
Cool.
Sweet.
Yeah.
What about you, Jennifer?
Let's see. Probably like, okay, so I really like the Oktoberfest so in San Francisco. Those are always fun. But I think the one event that I really like that the South Bay is doing is called Princess Project. And what they do is they give prom dresses to underprivileged girls. And I think, I don't know, for that event, I've been doing it for as long as I've been with One Brick and even before that. So I've been with the I've been helping the organization for a long time. But I think for me, the nice thing about it is we actually get to help the girls choose the dresses, and they also get to choose an accessory. So it's really nice to be able to work with the girls and just have that moment where they get to pick their prom dress and they're so happy, and it's just a really sweet, I don't know, just experience to kind of be part of. So like I said, I really like those events where you get to work with the individuals that you're helping. And I mean, granted, you know, food sorting and packing is nice, but to actually have that one-on-one contact or whatever is just really nice. And let's see, my most memorable event would probably be Comedy Day many, many years ago, where I got to meet Robin Williams before he passed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you get an autograph?
I got a picture with him, and that's only because my friend Lakshmi, she pushed me into him quite literally because I was so nervous. But he was really sweet and kind, and I think the pictures are on the One Brick website. It's somewhere. But yeah, it was just, I'm so glad that, you know, I got the opportunity to do something like that. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, the great thing about that event was we were always behind the stage helping with everything. So you got to hang out with all the talent, all the performance. So it was very cool.
Yeah, because I mean, we I mean, I don't know, we've done it so many years, and you know, like I was, you know, I've been fortunate enough to help every year that, you know, we've been able to do it. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to take place this year, but I'm hoping that maybe next year, you know, it gets put on the calendar again, that we can help.
Yeah.
I guess I'll go. It's hard for me to pick because I've had so many great experiences with One Brick, but my actual favorite event is we do work with this nonprofit here in Boston called More Than Words. And they're basically, they're kind of like a youth training organization. They run a bookstore and like a shop, like a coffee shop and stuff, and they run urban at-risk youth through this program where they, you know, teach them entrepreneurial skills. They work at this bookstore. They do all the backroom operations. And it's sort of intensive, they get job coaching and career development skills. And it's this whole program. It's a great great program. What I like about that event is we go there once a month, or had been going. Hopefully we'll get to go again soon. And you get to work side by side with the youth. They give you a tour of the facility. They talk about the program, and so you know, it's the actual activity is you're usually sorting books or media or scanning stuff. But the fact that you get to interact with the youth that work there and have conversation with them, it's a real meaningful event. That's one of my favorites.
Very cool. Brian.
Yeah, you know, I think
Anyone where I'm there, just say it. Just say it. Anyone where I'm there.
Well, that was one of my most memorable. How about that? But my favorites, when I was in San Francisco, all I did was work like morning to night. And so the weekend events where you ended up waking up at 6 a.m. to get to some event by, 6:30 to start signing people in at 7. I don't know. Somehow those always just seem so amazing to me. You got out of the apartment, you were out in, the woods or wherever, and some park to do some cleanup and to just, I don't know, to be out in some fresh air instead of in front of the computer. Just always seemed the absolute best to me. My most memorable, Clive forwarded me an email this morning from 2006 because we took some train. Was it from Boston to DC? Is that right?
From New York to DC, or vice versa.
Yeah, in 2006. I don't even why were we going from New York to DC?
I think we were doing a tour of we were just launching DC, maybe. We were doing I think that's when I met Molly.
Yeah.
And we went down to New York and met the 4 ladies that were running the chapter down there. If you remember, we went to that little place underground.
That's right.
They had everything from Kinko's. They'd spent a fortune at Kinko's.
That's right. And the reason for me that was so memorable was because that was the trip, I think, that Molly decided to get back together with me, and now we're married. So yeah, it's fantastic.
And it was kind of disgusting, really, because they were all touchy, lovey-dovey. Turned my stomach over, to be honest, if I had to.
All right. Let's. Okay, now to the meat of the meeting.
All right. So I'm just gonna. I have one slide. Not sure why that box is. What's going on with my computer now?
There you are.
You see anything?
We can see your desktop.
Okay.
Multiple copies of themselves.
Not sure. Let me try that again. So last week it worked.
It was working.
I'm in full screen mode. That's why. Boom. Okay.
I found it's better to just show a window rather than the whole thing.
Yeah.
Just have to pick the one.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Can you see that?
Yeah, it's good.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah. So basically, we're going to talk a little bit about events. The event, so the volunteer events is really, a big, obviously, core part of what One Brick does. It's really important aspect, to plan those events and get them up on the website, and make sure that, and
When you go into presentation mode, so we're not seeing all the menus and everything. I've got this massive screen and I've got this tiny little thing. There you go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So obviously the events piece is run by the events team as part of the local exec team chapters. The events team is really core role. They're basically the ones that are developing and maintaining relationships with nonprofits, building new relationships and making sure that we're keeping a full calendar with a variety of events, location, dates. We don't want to have a calendar, for example, that we all just have the same food bank and we go every Saturday. It's ideal to try to have a variety of different events and have different time things spread out over the calendar. So you have some things on Saturdays, you have some options on Sundays, you have some options on weeknights, just to fit people's different schedules. That's something that Boston took us a while to figure out, because it's easy to get Saturday events, but sometimes it's harder to get those weekday night events. Even Sundays are sometimes more difficult. And the most important part is making sure those events are fun and fulfilling for volunteers. We want to have volunteer event experiences that people are going to want to come back and do, and want to feel like they're giving back and making a difference. And obviously a big part of maintaining a good balance of strong volunteer events, high quality volunteer events is utilizing feedback from volunteers and from our EMs on how these events are going. We find out that I know that we've tried some events here in Boston and found out that people just were sitting around doing nothing the whole time at these galas. And when we decided to move away from that because people didn't like it. So the feedback we're getting, some chapters do surveys. That's something we're actually going to talk about in next week's session as part of the volunteer relations. Survey is a great way to get feedback from volunteers about, what's going on in the event. It could even be a simple Google form or just talking to the EM to find out what happens. That's a good way to make sure that, we're getting that feedback in terms of whether people are enjoying our events. And then another critical role of the events team is, making sure they work with the R&T or recruitment and training team to get events up on the calendar, to determine the max number of events that we can do in a month based on number of EMs. We don't want to plan 30 volunteer events and only be able to staff 3 of them. That would not be a good role. So the events scheduling piece is really important. The resource guide has a section on events. It's not as big as some of the other sections that we put together. Like last week, the recruitment and training section is pretty big. I think the events section we may need to build out a little bit more. But we've got in the executive team overview, we've got sort of a description of the events team, what their role is. In some chapters you have like a head events team person and then some people who schedule that afterwards. In some chapters they split it. So whatever works best in your individual location, make sure that you got an efficient events team. We just go to the events section. We have some resources in here. We have a outreach template, which is just that you can tweak for your own chapter, but it's sort of just a basic sort of template you can use to send to a nonprofit if you're reaching out to them for the first time. It says a little bit about what One Brick does, what we're trying to do, and then trying to set something up with them. We've used something like this in Boston and it has been pretty successful. We also have a example volunteer request form. The Boston chapter uses this as a way to collect information to put on the website to make sure that we have all the information we need to be able to put the event up. Make sure that the description has all the information that our volunteers need. Sometimes you'll get this information in an email, but this sort of is a good template, and which easily can be modified because it gives everything we need. Contact there, the name of the organization, obviously date and time, meeting place, descriptions, what are people doing. So it matches kind of what we have on the website. Description of the event, what are you going to be doing, what volunteers should know, is there parking, is there public transportation. One thing that I wanted to add to this, partially because I'm in the disability field for my job, is we always ask our nonprofits if the location is accessible or not. We've had one of our event managers for many years who was in a wheelchair, and we had a couple of events where we didn't ask about that and she couldn't get in the building. So I always want to make sure that's an important question to ask. Can you accommodate volunteers with disabilities? Contact info. So this has been really helpful for us to get the information we need to post.
I would never have expected that there would be a publicly accessible building that wasn't accessible. That's kind of amazing.
I think part of the problem was in that case, especially in an older city like Boston, you have a lot of grandfathered places that haven't been renovated. So technically they don't have an elevator, but if they were to renovate, then the ADA would apply. And that's a challenge in cities with older housing stock and older office buildings. But yeah, we were surprised by that. That's why we make sure we ask that. In terms of setting up events, we put together a guide on actually how to add a new or repeat event on the website. We didn't really have anything like this before. I looked at all the materials, so I created one, sort of step by step, everything you need to do with screenshots, adding the location, adding the organization, because it's not, you have to have several pieces to post an event. How to add the event, what each particular field, what you should put in there, and how to do it. So this is a good training resource. If you bring someone on to the events team, you can give them this, and this sort of walks them through how to put an event up on the calendar and how to edit it, along with screenshots. So we have some guidelines, tips, and types of events that work well for OneBrick. Some examples here. In my experience, we've had difficulty with events that have pre-volunteering meeting or trainings that don't occur immediately for the event. Part of the problem is not all volunteers may be able to attend these pre-trainings or pre-orientations. So we often try to make sure that they can get an orientation on site. Obviously, as a 501c3, we can't volunteer at a political fundraiser. We've had requests before to do political things, and obviously we need to stay away from that. Suggesting that at a larger event, making sure the OneBrick people are grouped together. We've had if you have a event where you're with 5 or 6 other groups and they split you all up and you don't really get to meet the other OneBrickers, it's better to ensure that our group is all put together. Generally, our events are outside working hours or on weekends and holidays. I don't know what, it would be interesting to see what other chapters think about this. We've had some issues before about, there was one volunteer that was once, I think this was early on in our existence, that people thought took money because they were handling money in a registration thing. So since then, we've tried to ask where people are directly handling it.
Well, historically, that's a no-no. We would tell the nonprofits we don't screen our volunteers. Some of them, this will be the first time we meet them. We don't think we should be giving them your cash. They usually got that message.
Yeah, and so we have some tips on to assign volunteer events. Best practices, make sure when you're, this is something we found to be useful in Boston, is that the events team or recruitment and training do an introduction to the nonprofit to say, oh, this is our event manager. They're going to be in touch with you to coordinate the event. Please give them any information they need to share with the volunteers. We found that doing that about 2 weeks out allows us to get good information to do a reminder email. What we found was effective is sending 2 sets of reminder emails, one about a week and a half or 2 weeks out, and then one a couple days out, and that seems to reduce last minute on RSVPs. And then of course a reminder about we don't want to share volunteer contact information. Sometimes the nonprofits will ask, like, can you give me volunteer emails? And what we do is say, well, you can get that directly from the volunteers. We don't give that information.
Awesome.
And then again, we have the resource guide to add and edit events. So a good little resource. I think we could probably beef this up a little bit more, but this is what we got in here for events right now. So I wanted to open it up. Yeah.
Early on, you showed a screen of different roles. What was that?
That was the management team introduction.
Oh, okay.
Do you want me to show it again?
Sure. I don't know that I've seen it. Have I seen it before?
You might have. I think it's something Melissa put together at some point. It's sort of
yeah. Sorry. I did see that before. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah. It's a good introduction If anyone new is coming in or wants to learn about One Brick, this gives sort of a high-level overview of the executive and management team sort of concept. So at this point, I wanted to open up to everyone to get their thoughts on what people wanted to get out of this session, any questions you have, and obviously, events is challenging for us right now because of COVID. We're sort of on hiatus in terms of in-person events. I know there's been some creative, last week there were some creative ideas that came out about when we talked about virtual volunteering. I think it was SOA that was on the call last week suggested that we could actually help some of our nonprofits with like tasks, sort of backroom tasks that we could do virtually. I thought that was a good suggestion.
Yeah,
But to get people's thoughts on if there's anything else they wanted to specifically get out of this.
Well, one point about the events team that is, I think, sometimes a bit of a surprise to people when they first join the organization is that the events team basically owns the entire process of creating the calendar and the relationship with the nonprofits. Sometimes people that are volunteer managers, they think that they need to kind of set up the event and coordinate the nonprofit, et cetera, and by separating out and making it a separate team or separate individual, that takes all the stress off of the event manager. The event manager doesn't have to kind of know how to do any of that. And I think it's important to make sure people are aware of that. And the other thing I would say is, I think when I've managed the event team or done event planning, the thing I got out of it personally is you actually have a lot of control over what the organization's doing. If you really care about particular kinds of causes, you're driving the boat, really.
That's true.
Which is kind of cool.
Well, one thing I kind of want to mention, that we've been experiencing for the Silicon Valley chapters, there's actually a lot of nonprofits that actually want us to sign the volunteers up directly also on their website. And so it's not just that the volunteers sign up on One Brick, it's that they also go ahead and contact, I'm going to give an example, like Second Harvest or Sacred Heart. And so there comes kind of like the issue, okay, well, someone has now canceled from the One Brick website, but have they opened up that spot then on the roster of Sacred Heart? And then also we're starting to kind of also do some stuff with on Meetup, where we're posting our events. And because it's still kind of new, and we had this one girl, she signed up on Meetup, and I sent her an email saying, hey, I saw that you signed up on Meetup. Could you please also sign up on the One Brick website? And so in some ways, it's kind of getting a little bit confusing for some of the volunteers, because they have to kind of, not only do they sign up on the One Brick Meetup website, they have to sign up on the One Brick website, and sometimes they have to sign up additionally from the nonprofit, with the nonprofit.
Well,
that's an interesting point. And actually, that's something that I've noticed too, is it seems like there's an increasing amount of nonprofits that want to do some type of online pre-registration. So we've had to obviously, direct our volunteers to sign up there in addition to sign up on our website. A lot of them will still do registration, at the event, but that does seem to be a trend that I've noticed as well.
Well, historically, we tried to discourage that. Number one, we didn't ever accept reservations on Meetup. We would post an event there, but we wouldn't actually have any slots. We would just have a link directly to our website, which avoids that problem.
Okay.
And then most nonprofits will allow people to register on the day when they get there. I know Sacred Heart, they have a bank of terminals and things like that. And I would always tell the nonprofit, we don't know exactly who's going to be there. We just know we'll bring you a team. And we also have a lot of no-shows. And so rather than have you deal with a bunch of people that aren't showing up, we'll just guarantee to bring you the 12 people or the 15 people. And mostly they'll say okay to that.
Yeah.
You know, they won't,
Yeah,
they will.
I agree with you, Clive. We've tried to discourage that, but some of these, particularly larger nonprofits, I can think of a couple of places in particular that we have a lot of competition trying to get spots there, that they kind of like, well, if you want to volunteer here, you have to do this.
Yeah.
And what we used to do way back when is when they did ask for that, instead of having the volunteers individually re-register, our events team would reach out to them once we finalized the sign-up list and say, these are the names of the people that we have signed up, and then they would pre-register them so that they wouldn't have to register when they arrived there again.
Yeah. Yeah. Although the only issue with that is you can't give the email address because we don't have people's permission. But
Right. We used to give them, I think we gave them mines or a generic one.
right. But you know, all of these are all about having a relationship with a nonprofit, right? So
Yeah.
with Sacred Heart, we've been going there for 10 years. They know how we work. I'm sure they'll be flexible. Some other nonprofit that doesn't know us from anything. I mean, the thing is, do they view us as an organization they're working with, or just as a marketing mechanism?
That's an interesting point. I know some of the closest relationships we have are with places that really know what we do and see the value of it. I think some of these other bigger places, I think we have two places in particular, a place called Crayos the Crayons in the Greater Fawcett Food Bank. We're just one of a host of people that go there.
Right. Yeah, well, the big one is these big sponsored races and things like that. They've got to find 200 people to hand out water. They don't really care where they're coming from. They just need warm bodies. They're not trying to build a relationship. They're not trying to build community. They just want somebody to throw bottles of water at sweaty people.
Yeah, what's interesting is, you know, we had some issues with those kind of walks and races for a while. A, we had a lot of no-shows at those type of events, and B, they're poorly organized. There's a lot of chaotic kind of. I remember we did a thing with the AIDS Action Committee, and I was at EM, and we were told to work a water stop, which didn't exist. So they sent us about 3 miles out in this course, and we got there was no water stop. There's no table. There was nothing. So I called them and said, "Oh, it's actually here." So we went there, and then they actually didn't. They were handing out seltzer water to the runners, and of course, runners. Forward Beverages, which is a local company here, was the sponsor. But no runner's going to want to have seltzer water when they're running.
Well, the problem with those events is they're often, you know, the committee that's organizing it, it's usually a brand new committee every year because it's such a disaster. They have to work hard to get a new committee, and then there's no knowledge that passes from year to year, or limited knowledge.
Yeah.
So it's really tough. That's why the 5K or whatever it was that you guys used to do in Boston was good.
Yeah, that was about to mention it. That was probably the more successful one because we were getting money out of that. You know, again.
They also had somebody that was a volunteer coordinator.
Yeah. Unfortunately, what happened with that is they're the person who sort of glued that, who ran the volunteers on their end, who really kept the show running, left, and then the quality of them went down. And then I think Adam basically sort of just said, forget it. They also shifted their events to places that were harder to get to. Instead of being in Greater Boston, they moved them out way to the suburbs.
You know, Jennifer, with regard to your observations earlier, I think I would echo a lot of what Clive said, and let me sort of offer my own perspective. You know, what we've always done is we've always focused on making volunteering as easy as possible for the volunteer.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and so what we've always told nonprofits is, if you want to partner with us, you know, we will bring 10 people or however many people, but we're not going to provide their contact information to you. You know, data is private, and One Brick takes that very seriously. And then number two, we won't have our volunteers register on your site or whatever it is. And number three, if we're using third-party applications, like I think Clyde mentioned this earlier, so we don't, at least from my experience, we wouldn't typically have volunteers sign up through some third-party application to RSVP on there. I remember what we typically did was just had the link to our own calendar where folks could then RSVP, like I don't know, I'll make this up, like on Volunteer Match, we would have our link in the description, and then the person would click on that and RSVP through our calendar, as opposed to RSVPing on 2 or 3 different systems. The final thing I would say is, for the most part, we would get so many requests from nonprofits asking for our help that we could sort of say, well, we'll help you. If you can agree to all these stipulations to make things easy for folks to volunteer, then we can help you. As opposed to let's have our folks bend over backwards for you, nonprofit. I don't know. That's how I remember things. I'm sorry, Jennifer, did I interrupt you?
No. But like one of the things, like with Second Harvest or whatever, they changed their rules. Like everyone now has to sign up with them, otherwise it's just a no-go. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of the nonprofits in general have been burned by other, meetup groups or other volunteer organizations where people didn't show up. And they've we've seen a lot of them move more towards also signing up on their website. So I guess that they also feel more comfortable that we really will bring, the 10 people that we said we would. So, and yeah, we do mention, we do definitely mention, the fact that like we don't normally, have our volunteers sign up. Just if we can have our volunteers sign up on our website, what we usually do is we give them a link so that they can check our website to see how many volunteers have signed up. But like I said, that's not always necessarily the case. And then in regards to the meetup, we have, like I said, we kind of just started up with the meetup, putting One Brick events to kind of get more people to sign up with One Brick and just to be more aware of like the events that we're doing, because there are a lot of volunteer organizations on Meetup or just groups, and we see a lot of the same volunteers from the Meetup groups at the same events that we're at. So we were hoping to to get some more volunteers at our, aware of our organization. And we do definitely put in the One Brick, what is it called, link, or the event link in the website of Meetup, but people sometimes don't necessarily, take the extra time to click on the link. And I think also, like a lot of people, like when they look at an event and they only see on the Meetup site there's only 3 people coming, they don't necessarily know that there's already 20 One Brick volunteers signed up on the One Brick website. So they don't necessarily take that extra step to go onto our website. And so what I sometimes do is like, I will literally write in, I'm bringing 20 friends on the Meetup site. So it reflects the number of volunteers from the One Brick website, so that people will think, oh, it's not just me and Susie from the Meetup. It's actually a whole other group that's additionally coming. So like when they go on the Meetup website, it just doesn't look like there's 3 people coming.
Very cool.
Good point. Yeah, one thing that's kind of interesting is when we started One Brick, there was no Facebook, there was no Meetup. Yeah. Most of the profits didn't have websites. And if they did have a website, it basically had a picture of some kid. and wearing a hat. Now they're all building some of the technology that we've had out there for almost 20 years. So it definitely changes the relationship.
Yeah. Jeanette or Letty, is there anything you guys want to talk about, or questions or suggestions?
No.
that was succinct. That was right to
I
the
thought you
point.
sent the pictures of Laura Bush.
Jeanette, anything on your mind?
No, no questions that I can think of at this point.
So is this session supposed to be about the how events are created and how the calendar is set up, as opposed to actually managing the event once you get there?
Yeah. I think last week we talked a little bit about in the recruitment and training piece about the event manager, and we went over sort of tips for event management, best practices, that kind of thing.
Right.
This was more intended to be about scheduling events, what are good events to put up, that kind of logistics, and how to put them up on the calendar. That's why that's why I created the guide to put actually how to put the events on the calendar. I know that it's not exactly, when we've brought people on, people get confused because they don't realize they have to add the location and the organization in order to have the event.
Right.
It's not always intuitive, or the organization contact you have to add here and then come back, and then.
Yeah.
The guide, I'll tell you, every one of these links that brings up a form from this resource guide, these forms are just phenomenal. They're just phenomenal. Like, it's the screenshots that you put in here, the bullet point, step by step, how to do it. It's just incredible. It's just incredible. I mean, yeah. I wish I had this when I was.
Well, I mean, that's what's sort of the idea behind this, is that if you recall at some of the I think the regional retreats and our CD calls, they were looking at sort of some centralized materials. What can I do to show my new events team person how to do this, or well, how do I do recruitment and training? What is there a tool book for how to use the newsletter tool? Those kind of things.
Yeah, this is awesome. This is, I mean, like, for every chapter, if, I would imagine if you need to have a new events scheduler, it's got to be so daunting. You say, hey, do you want to become our chapter's event scheduler? My reaction would be no effing way, right? But if all of a sudden you have this guide that just step by step lays out exactly what it's like, hey, can you make beef bourguignon with a souffle? Okay, sure, but what do? I don't know, wing it. Right? Suddenly this is like a step-by-step cookbook recipe. Yeah. It's fantastic.
Yeah, as I said in the previous sessions, that this is like a work, a living document. So as we evolve, we'll update this. If things change, if we miss things and we need to go back and add things, we can do that. When you take something out because it's not relevant, we can do that.
The biggest challenge with all of this is having people know that it's there.
Yeah.
I think people tend to reinvent the wheel. They don't know where to look. So I think we need to just kind of keep doing these kinds of sessions. Yeah. Every year we should have a normal expectation that every year, every chapter has a team meeting where they go through it. Just keep it alive, because it just
I would agree
into the background. Because we've had various levels of training at various times that they just get lost.
Yeah, and we don't want that. We don't want to lose that. I think that's a great idea. Definitely, I'm going to plug this again at the CD call next week.
I think what you've done here that is different from what we've had in the past, which makes this so much more effective. Actually, maybe it's not you, it's Google. Google made like online docs available, because it used to just be like scattered stuff that was sent randomly here and there, and it's like, well,
Well, yeah, I mean, having the drive is, a lot better. I mean, imagine if this was a bunch of, Word documents that you had to have somewhere.
yeah, exactly. But now it's this one consolidated online living document, and it's all at your fingertips. Yeah, I mean, this is just fantastic.
You're welcome. And, I can't take full credit for it. I can't.
And we can invent these videos in there too.
Oh,
People
yeah.
see your pretty face.
So the next session is going to be not next week, the week after. Next week's the CE call. I think that's August, is it 3rd? Yeah. And that's going to be about volunteer and community relations. So all about social events, social media, that kind of thing. That we'll be going through that piece of the guide.
Awesome.
And maybe during the CD call next week, we should try to get people signed up to take part. Get a larger crowd of people.
Yeah, I was hoping that we would get better turnout because we did plug it in the last CD call. Hopefully, I think if we push it next week, I think we can try to get more attendance.
Yeah, the CD call was a month ago, and to be honest, the world is on fire right now. So
well, that's the problem. I mean, there's so many crazy things happening.
Yeah, but Graham, if it's okay with you, I think during the CD call, I mean, I'd love to spend a little bit of time plugging the resource guide and just. Sure. Yeah, I mean, if I have your permission, maybe I'll take 10 minutes during the CD call to just sort of go over the resource guide with everyone. And, I'll go down the list one by one. Mark, do you have the resource guide? Do you have it bookmarked on your browser? That sort of thing. And I'll ask every CD to make sure that every one of their chapter management team members has it bookmarked as well. I mean, it's just so phenomenal.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yep. Very good.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your Monday night.
Yes, stay safe, everyone.
All right.
Thank you. Good night.
Have a great
Later. All right.
Night.
Good night.